Courtroom 204 of the Brookside County Courthouse was packed on Monday morning. Outside, the rain poured relentlessly. Inside, the tension was thick as fog. In the front row, Judge Roland Mercer, a white man in his 60s, sat silently reviewing his notes. His sharp eyes glinted behind silver-rimmed glasses. A 15-year-old black teenager, scrawny and hunched under a loose purple hoodie, stood at the defendant's table. His name was Malik Carter, charged with stealing a tablet from a local electronics store. Malik kept his head low, hands in his pockets, silent. His court-appointed attorney, Kathy Rowe, fumbled through papers like she hadn't read the case beforehand. Mercer stared at Malik with the cold gaze of someone who had already judged him. "You think you're a lawyer, boy?" he sneered. Laughter trickled from the gallery. "This isn't a civics class. This is real court." Malik lifted his eyes, not with fear, but quiet defiance. Beneath that worn hoodie was a secret no one knew yet. Malik wasn't like the other teens who stood trial before Judge Mercer. He grew up in Little Brook, a neighborhood where gunshots were more common than school bells. His mother, Tanya Carter, had been a former court clerk, now battling stage 2 cancer. His father, Marcus, a trial attorney, had died 3 years ago in a mysterious car crash, closed too quickly to be coincidence. Malik had been raised among boxes of legal files and court transcripts. While other kids watched cartoons, he listened to his mother recount injustices and legal loopholes. He knew Miranda rights by age 10 and could recite Gideon versus Wainwright by 12. After his father's death, Malik made a promise to his mother. One day he would follow in Marcus's footsteps and fight for justice. But instead of wearing a graduation gown, he now stood before a biased judge in a courtroom that saw only guilt in his skin color. Still, Malik was ready. He had not come to beg. He had come to fight. 3 days before the trial, Malik and 3 schoolmates passed by Brookpoint Electronics. A sleek tablet sat unattended near the glass display. No security cables, no staff in sight. Malik stepped in, picked up the device, tapped a few screens, then put it back. An hour later, police knocked on his door. Malik was handcuffed in front of neighbors while his mother screamed in protest. The police report claimed the surveillance footage showed Malik leaving the store with the tablet. But when reviewed closely, the footage was edited. The part where he returned the device had been cut. No eyewitnesses, no tablet found at his home. Still, he was charged with felony theft, carrying up to 3 years in juvenile detention. Malik realized if he didn't do something bold, the system would swallow him whole, just like it had done to countless others. The night before the hearing, Malik called his Aunt Alana, his father's older sister and a renowned criminal defense attorney in Chicago. She was stunned when Malik said, "I'm going to defend myself." At first, she objected furiously, but when Malik laid out the details, she fell silent. "If you're sure," she said eventually, "I'll support you from afar. But this is no game." Malik smiled faintly. "I'm not playing." He stayed up all night, reviewing every piece of evidence, memorizing relevant cases like Brady versus Maryland. He handwrote a motion demanding full surveillance footage and another seeking dismissal if exculpatory evidence had been withheld. At dawn, he dressed carefully, still wearing the old hoodie, but inside it beat the heart of a strategist. He wasn't just walking into court as a defendant. He was walking in as a legacy. At exactly 8 a.m., the courtroom came to order. Judge Mercer tapped his gavel with bored impatience. "Malik Carter, charged with theft and obstruction." Malik rose and looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor, I wish to represent myself." Gasps rippled through the room. Even Kathy Rowe nearly dropped her files. Mercer raised an eyebrow. "Represent yourself? Been watching too much courtroom TV?" Malik didn't flinch. "I understand my Sixth Amendment rights and the risks. I waive my right to counsel." Mercer leaned back smugly. "Fine. I expect a good show." Prosecutor Thomas Briggs smirked from his table. "We have video. This one's an easy win." But Briggs didn't know. Malik wasn't here for a show. He was here for justice. Malik approached the prosecutor's table calmly. "Your Honor, I request the full, unedited surveillance footage from 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., not just the selective clip provided." Briggs scoffed. "We submitted the relevant portion." Malik stood firm. Under Brady versus Maryland, all potentially exculpatory evidence must be disclosed. Selective edits violate due process. Judge Mercer's eyebrows rose slightly. Prosecutor Brigg, any objection? Brigg hesitated. We'll recheck the original file. The room fell into tense silence. A 15-year-old boy had just forced a seasoned prosecutor to backpedal. Mercer studied Malik more closely now. Proceed, Mr. Carter. And Malik knew the real battle had just begun. Malik called his first witness, Samuel Benton, the store's IT technician. Mr. Benton, were you the one operating the store's cameras on March 18th? Benton nodded. Yes. Were you asked to trim the footage before handing it over to police? The air grew still. Benton fidgeted. I followed orders from the manager. Please answer, yes or no. Yes. Whispers spread like wildfire. Malik turned to the judge. I submit a signed request from the manager, Prosecutor Briggs' cousin, asking the footage be streamlined. Mercer's demeanor shifted. He stared hard at Brigg. Suddenly, this wasn't a petty theft case. It was a cover-up, and Malik had just drawn first blood. The court recessed for 15 minutes to verify Malik's documents. When they returned, Mercer's face was more serious than before. Mr. Brigg, any comments? Brigg wiped sweat from his brow. I wasn't aware of my cousin's actions. I withdraw the video. Malik stood. Without physical evidence, no stolen item, and no eyewitnesses. What grounds remain for these charges? Mercer frowned. We'll continue, but be careful, Carter. You're walking dangerous ground. Malik nodded. I know how to swim, Your Honor, especially when I'm swimming for my life. A few soft chuckles emerged from the gallery. Malik had learned how to weaponize truth in a courtroom built to ignore it. Brigg played a desperate card. He called Terrence Miles, a classmate of Malik's. Malik was stunned. They hadn't spoken in weeks. Did you see Malik leave the store with the tablet? Brigg asked. I remember him holding it, Terrence said hesitantly. But did you see him walk out with it? No, I'm not sure. Malik stood to cross-examine. You were caught tagging the school wall 2 weeks ago, weren't you? Yes. And what did police offer if you testified? Terrence looked down. They said they'd drop the charges if I cooperated. Malik turned to the judge. I move to strike this testimony, coerced and unreliable. Mercer hesitated, then nodded. Motion granted. Malik exhaled. In court, every move was a double-edged sword, but now he was learning how to swing without cutting himself. During the midday recess, Malik stepped into the hallway for water. An older man approached, quiet, composed, sharp-eyed. You're Malik Carter? He asked. Yes. I'm Vernon Shields. I knew your father. I watched Marcus fight in this very courtroom, against this very judge. Malik blinked. You knew Judge Mercer? Vernon nodded. Marcus was building a case to expose his bias, but he was threatened with disbarment. He handed Malik an envelope. Your father left these notes, never published. You might find use for them. Malik held the envelope as if it contained a piece of his father's soul. This was no longer just about defending himself. It was about continuing a mission left unfinished. Malik sat in a quiet corner of the courthouse lobby, tearing open the envelope Vernon Shields had handed him. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, legal briefs, and annotations. They detailed Judge Mercer's long history of biased rulings, statistical evidence, transcripts, even comments overheard in chambers. At the bottom of the pile was a letter. If I don't make it, let this truth find the light. Signed, Dad. Malik felt a lump in his throat. He had walked into this courtroom to defend himself, but now he realized he was carrying forward a fight his father never got to finish. The pages laid out strategies Marcus had planned to use in court, including the exact motion Malik had filed earlier that morning. Vernon hadn't just handed him notes, he'd given him a blueprint. Malik stood, his resolve forged anew. He was no longer just defending a name, he was defending a legacy. As the bailiff called court back to session, Malik returned not as a scared boy, but as a son armed with truth, justice, and blood memory. Judge Mercer's voice was sharper when court resumed. Mr. Carter, continue. Malik handed over a new motion, one citing State v. Ellis, where a conviction was overturned due to prosecutorial misconduct involving edited video. The room shifted. Brigg looked visibly nervous. "This is absurd," Brigg snapped. "He's just a kid." Malik turned to him calmly. "Age doesn't diminish truth, counselor." He presented a spreadsheet from his father's file, listing 28 juvenile defendants, 23 of them black or Hispanic, who'd received detention for first-time offenses under Mercer's gavel, while white peers walked with community service. "Statistical patterns," Malik said, "suggest bias, not impartiality." Mercer tried to dismiss it as anecdotal. "These aren't hard facts." "Then let's make them hard," Malik replied, holding up an affidavit from the Brookside Legal Review, accepting the pattern for investigation. Murmurs echoed across the gallery. The judge shifted uncomfortably. The courtroom had become something new, a place where power was being tested, not just exercised. And for the first time in years, Mercer felt vulnerable. Malik called his next witness, Detective Alford, one of the arresting officers. "Detective," Malik began, "what led you to arrest me?" "We received a report and reviewed surveillance footage provided by the store." "Did you verify the footage's integrity?" "I assumed it was complete." "Assumed," Malik echoed. "Did you question why the footage ended the moment I put the tablet back?" Alford hesitated. "It didn't occur to me." "Did you see me walk out with the tablet?" "No." "Then why arrest me?" Alford's mouth opened, then closed. "No further questions." The room stirred. One by one, Malik dismantled the pillars of the case built against him, not with theatrics, but with precision. This wasn't just a defense, it was a prosecution of the very justice system meant to protect him. Mercer banged his gavel. "Order!" But the courtroom would not return to silence so easily. People were listening now, watching, and for the first time, questioning the machine behind the robe. Prosecutor Brigg demanded a recess. During the break, Malik stood by the vending machine when Maria Lane, a young reporter from the Brookside Daily, approached him. "You have no idea what you've started," she said. "We've been trying to investigate this judge for years." Malik didn't answer. She handed him her card. "If you win this, it won't just be a story, it'll be a reckoning." Back inside, Judge Mercer looked visibly rattled. His fingers tapped against his gavel restlessly. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I must remind you, this court is not a place for theater." Malik looked him in the eye. "This isn't theater, Your Honor. This is truth, finally being heard." Brigg called for dismissal of Malik's motions on technical grounds, but Mercer, perhaps fearing more backlash, allowed them to stand. The tide was turning, not just in public opinion, but in the very soul of the courtroom. Justice, once weaponized against Malik, was now cracking its own shield. As court recessed again for the day, Malik returned home to find his mother collapsed on the living room floor. She was rushed to County General. Doctors said it was stress and overexertion from chemo. "She's stable, but fragile," they warned. Malik sat beside her hospital bed, clutching her hand. "You need to stop," she whispered. "It's too much." "I can't," he said softly. "They tried to take everything from us. I won't let them take you too." She smiled faintly. "You have your father's fire." That night, Malik stayed in the hospital lobby, laptop open, continuing prep for the next day. He read over his father's closing argument in the Ellis case, underlined twice. "Let the law bend toward justice, not power." It struck Malik hard. He wasn't alone. Every word, every motion, every objection was a continuation of something sacred. And tomorrow he would speak not just for himself, but for every kid who never got to. The next day, the gallery was full. Reporters, lawyers, students, even former defendants. Malik brought his final exhibit, sworn statements from 7 teens who had served time under Mercer for petty crimes. Each of these, Malik said, shows a pattern. Same charges, same judge, same punishment. All of them minorities. Mercer shifted in his chair. "This is not a trial against me." "Then stop making it about you," Malik shot back. "This is about equal protection under the law." The crowd erupted. Mercer slammed his gavel. "One more outburst and I'll clear the courtroom." But it was too late. The walls had cracked. A system once built on silence had just been forced to listen. Malik took his seat, jaw tight, eyes forward. The truth was now on the record, and no gavel could erase it. Just before closing arguments, Prosecutor Brigg did the unexpected. He requested to approach the bench. "Your Honor," he began, "the state moves to dismiss all charges against Malik Carter." Gasps filled the courtroom. Malik froze. "What's the meaning of this?" Mercer demanded. Brigg avoided eye contact. "The case was built on incomplete evidence, and the witness statements are unreliable. Continuing would violate the integrity of this court." Mercer stared at him like he'd betrayed an old pact. "I don't accept the motion." But before he could strike it down, Malik stood. "You don't get to choose justice anymore, Your Honor." Mercer froze, gavel raised. The room was quiet. Then someone stood in the back. Vernon Shields. "It's over, Judge." Cameras flashed. Reporters surged forward. Malik didn't smile. He simply nodded, like a soldier finishing the last mile of a long march. That evening, Maria Lane's article exploded online. "Teen Outsmart System, the trial that broke a judge." Within hours, the Judicial Ethics Board launched an inquiry into Judge Mercer's rulings. Local civil rights groups began compiling testimonies from youth once sentenced in his court. Malik's story made national news. Offers poured in. Interviews, scholarships, law programs. He declined most of them. "This isn't about me," he told Maria. "It's about what comes next." At the courthouse, Mercer remained silent, refusing to answer questions. But inside his chambers, he watched the footage on loop. Malik, 15 years old, standing tall, unraveling decades of unchecked power with nothing but facts, fire, and a legacy too powerful to silence. 2 months later, Malik stood outside the newly named Marcus Carter Center for Juvenile Justice, a community-run legal clinic offering free counsel to youth in marginalized communities. Inside, his mother worked part-time helping with records, her health slowly improving. Vernon Shields served as lead advisor. Maria Lane documented their progress weekly. And Malik? He spent his days mentoring teens like Terrence, those who had been used, coerced, discarded. "It's not about revenge," Malik often told them. "It's about rewriting the script." Across the country, youth-led legal collectives began forming, inspired by his case. They wore shirts that read, "Know your rights, speak your truth, defend each other." The boy once mocked by a judge now stood as a symbol of what happens when justice is no longer optional, but demanded. On the 1-year anniversary of his trial, Malik returned to Courtroom 204, this time not as a defendant, but as a guest speaker for a new judicial training initiative. Judge Mercer had quietly resigned. In his place sat a new judge, black, female, formerly a juvenile public defender. As Malik addressed the new class of law interns and officers, he looked around the room. "Justice," or he said, "isn't a gift handed down by a system. It's a right we must defend, even when we're the only voice in the room." The gallery rose in applause. His mother watched from the front row, tears in her eyes. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting light across the courthouse steps where once he'd stood in chains. Now he stood in truth, and the system would never be the same again. Lesson learned from the story. Malik's story shows that justice is not always served fairly, especially for those who are marginalized by the system. But with resilience, knowledge, and courage, one can force even the most rigid institutions to confront their own failures. Malik didn't just defend himself against injustice. He set a precedent for others, proving that even a teenager can ignite the spark of justice if they refuse to stay silent and use truth as their weapon. The legal system is run by people, and people can change if someone is brave enough to stand up.